This video brings you down into the villainous lair, where you can see is under construction, but nevertheless its various nefarious parts are scattered about, giving promise to their eventual employment. Down here in the villain lair is where I want to talk about villains, and you will have noted that at those pledge levels there is some talk of villains. You get the villains, ooh, ah, and one can properly ask, so how hard is it to make up some villains? I mean, don't we have 92 enemies books anyway? I mean, okay, right then. Villains are more than that, and my villains are more than that. Why? First, we'll start with those phrases that I've talked about before that are supposed to frame an entire endeavor of playing champions. One of them having to do with sort of the meaning or sense of the powers, and then the second one having to do with the kind of dramatic content, to use that word with a little d, and a location. Villains are a piece of that, or are emerging from that, just the same way that the heroes are, and provides perspective on things that's not the heroes. Because you see, that's where the villains matter most. What they think, how they act, and what they do. So there's two ways to go, both of which are perfectly wonderful and fire in tandem, so I'll just go through each one of them, but think of doing them both at once. You have the character sheets themselves. You have hunteds on there, and with any luck at all, you've got names and stuff on there that the player has provided, and you're looking and saying, so Dr. Meat. Hunted by Dr. Meat. Former member of the villainous team that she was on. Putting it into that same context that the hero came from. In this case, my example character, Miasma, where you're looking at, on the one hand, powers that are supposed to be very ambiguous about what a superhero really is and what a supervillain really is, regardless of what people call them. And then second, you also have this notion of the crime, politics, and particularly issues of policing in the city of Chicago. Great. Dr. Mead, in that context, starts to take form in terms of just how malevolent they are or how idealistic they are, all sorts of other things, what part of Chicago they may come from or be associated with, how they relate to the rest of this villain team, which is called the Wild Side. Okay, all that in hand. Let's take a look at the other way, which is making up villains that aren't on the sheets, that are not partly handed to you by the players. And a good example comes from my San Antonio game, in which one character's various backstory and current issues are related to immigration. And so looking at this, it said, well, okay, Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement, ICE, would seem to be involved, even mentioned at one point by the player. Fantastic. And then here I've got my little axis to grind. I've got my little interests as the participatory GM. And I find myself saying, well, isn't it about time that the outsourcing that characterizes military activity, campus security, and a variety of other public-funded concerns, this outsourcing to private companies, and in the case of those two things, the company formerly known as Blackwater, and has gone through a variety of names. I'll pick one of them, pronounced Z, spelled X-E, could well be involved. Fantastic. Are you saying, okay, remember, the powers in this game, the statement is that they are proprietary. They are owned by a given company / government or other similar concern. Fantastic. We're talking about, I'll use the name Blackwater, with its own proprietary bag of superpowers. Ooh, says Bad Me. Ooh, that's going to be bad. So, easy enough. I instantly think of a powers set that includes a framework, and one slot in the framework is going to be common to everybody who has this power set, and then the rest will be individualized to each character. So that's great. They'll all have this same power. I think of these guys as real stealth ops types. I'm going to call the group and the power set Ghost. And then I'm going to take a look at each one. Okay, great. Well, it's called Ghost. Good enough. In this framework that each one of them has, one slot is going to be a combination of flight and desolid. Great. Now, the other slots will be individualized per character, but the whole framework per character is only usable when the members are together. All right, I'm getting it now. We've got, this power set, which is very team-oriented, very ops-oriented. And then, of course, you have the individualization of powers too, and then all the skills and personalities and characteristic constructions that go with that particular character. So I get to make up individual supervillains as well. They're just linked in this cool way. Fantastic. It's all coming together off of this idea of a Blackwater proprietary powers base. And this would be the team that they're using to outsource to Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement. All right, starting to come together. I've got sort of this basis on it. And then, of course, are they heroes or villains? Well, in political terms and today's policy terms, it's people will have opinions about that, won't they? One way or the other. That is how you come up with villains who aren't on the character sheet. They're still linked in by all the issues of the two statements, and there are connections to the characters, not least that they are going to be in the same spot, at least in terms of their appearance. So, and why they would be in that spot is a question that you can easily answer, and it just snaps everything into place about how they and that hero will have some kind of interaction. Fantastic. Note my role in this. I've got my own opinions about formerly Blackwater, Z, Eric Prince, any number of other real-world issues that this company is related to. Those are going to show up. Those are going to show up in my depictions. Those are going to show up in my characterization choices. Those are going to show up in dialogue. Those are going to show up in all kinds of ways because this is participatory role-playing. This is what we do. It will be absolutely different when a different group of people sits down at the table. And that is on purpose. It's not plug and play. I can't just slap down Ghost as a super group and say, there you go, plug them in, play. What I can do is provide you materials with such constructions to show you how to do it yourselves. So when I say I'll provide 3 villains, I'm really providing a villain creator pack in a fashion that I suspect will be incredibly powerful for you in use.